The following program is presented by the Metropolitan Library Service Agency.
Hello, welcome to All About Kids, a program focusing on the interests of children and young people and some of the issues affecting them. In October of 1990, the National Commission on Children held a field hearing in St. Paul. This commission was established by public law. Its members are appointed by the President of the United States, the Speaker of the House, and the President pro tem of the Senate. They're a bipartisan body composed of public officials, experts in children's health, education, child development, and members of the general public. The focus of this, the 18th and final field hearing, was on children as members of a workforce in the year 2000. Expert testimony from across the Midwest, including some young people, was heard. During our program today, we'll take a look at the press conference, which discussed some of the issues focusing particularly on children as workers. We'll talk with Roger Sween from the Department of Library Development and Services and take a look at how public libraries fulfill the information needs of children as future members of the workforce. And we'll have some spot interviews with people who were attending the commission who will give us their ideas on the particular issues they want commission members to focus on. Roger, it's a pleasure to have you on All About Kids today. And we've been talking a little bit about the National Commission on Children and Youth and why those of us who are very involved in libraries are interested in what this commission is doing. You are the Library Cooperation Specialist at the Department of Library Development and Services, which is part of the Department of Education. Mm-hmm. And I know you have some really strong opinions on not only the role of libraries in the educational process, but also that cooperation between libraries and other public institutions mm-hmm. and private mm-hmm. institutions.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I'm like most people. I've had children, but I haven't worked very much with children, except indirectly. I was a school librarian briefly, and I was also the head of a public library in my past, and it was the children's services librarian that I had at that time that sort of educated me about the value of the services that libraries provide to children. And basically, a lot of my view about the necessity of this whole area of how we treat children with our public institutions is what I've observed about what the needs are and how people who are professionals in children's services work and what they're trying to do. And recently, I had an opportunity to do this in a very large way because we spent 18 months preparing for the Governor's Conference on Library and Information Services. And that day and a half of meetings took place in September of 1990. But 18 months led up to this, and we held meetings around the state and asked people what they thought their needs were. And it didn't make any difference what region we went to or what group of people we talked to. They always voiced concern for children and the services that children need.
So the Governor's Conference really focused on a variety of issues, but children's issues came to the fore.
Yeah, we started out always by talking about what people observed were the trends and changes that were happening to them and their environment wherever they lived, and then what issues they thought emerged from these changes, and then eventually what kind of resources they would need and what kind of library services. But in that process, in people identifying needs, they always identified needs to serve children better. And it didn't make any difference if we were talking to people in the northern part of the state or the southern part of the state, and it didn't make any difference if in the metropolitan area where we held 25 of these meetings, if we were talking to older citizens, or if we were talking to government documents librarians, or if we were talking to people who were interested in research, always the need of children came up in every single group.
And children now, too. One of the things that concerned me at the commission hearing was this focus on the productive workforce, which I know was a theme of the White House conference, or is a theme, but there is also something to be said for helping children to have a richer, more literate, more positive childhood right now, so that when they become adults, not only will they be good workers and a benefit to industry, but they will also have, I think, a better life.
Yeah, I think that is characteristic of our concern for children, is that we look at them for their potential. And it ignores that children are persons who are living right now, and like any other citizen, they have the same rights that adults do. And that is to be treated with respect, to be given measures of independence, and to be supported in their own development for their own good as individuals. They're not little economic units that will someday cash our Social Security checks when they grow older. So we have lots of attention today on children, and lots of political attention. But I worry that a lot of this is lip service, and we are not willing to commit the kind of resources that are needed now in order to make a difference in children's lives. One thing as a person that is concerned about information and how people use information, I see that a basic situation is we expect children to make all kinds of decisions, and we don't support them in their ability to make decisions. We just turn them loose. It's quite clear that there's a lot of advertising, marketing that goes on that's pitched at children in television and other media that children and young people encounter. There was a recent survey of parents in Demographics magazine, and that showed that 75% of parents with young children just accept this advertising. They think that's a part of the way that life is today, and children should be able to make up their own minds about the products that are pitched to them.
Even though they have no background information other than what they see on that one page in the magazine or on television.
Largely, children are influenced by mass market advertising, and they're socialized primarily by other children. And as a former college teacher, I see that this goes on all the way through college, that the greatest influence on students and young people is other students and other young people.
If you're wearing the right shoes or the right blue jeans, then...
Yeah, all those things become very important. But, think of the decisions that children are expected to work out for themselves. Not only what products are they going to buy, but how are they going to tend to their own learning in school and out of school, and how are they going to develop their interests in careers. A lot of career development in the early stages is just copycat stuff. Children get interested first in careers that are pitched to them as being very romantic, or they're the careers of their family members or of other people in their family's acquaintance. And they don't really learn what it is that they can do themselves, and they don't really work out what their options are.
I think that was something that came out at the commission hearing. Tom Nelson, the Commissioner of Education, spoke about the Minnesota Choice system. And again, how do children or young people decide which school is going to be best in terms of...
I think one of the surprises in the choice options for children in school was that just because we have a lot of choices doesn't mean that children take advantage of those choices. So a second thing has to happen in order to make sure that children and their parents and have enough information so that they can go about deciding what's in their best advantage in the long run, I would hope, and taking advantage of those choices that are available. So what I'm saying in all of these things is we can't just turn children loose as we seem to be willing to do. We have to take measures to support their abilities to learn and to make choices, and hopefully to make wise choices.
And that's where the school media specialist or the public librarian comes in with the information.
I think that as librarians, one thing that we're very concerned about is that people of all ages get information, quality information, and they also get the skills in order to take advantage of that information so that they can use information for choices, and hopefully healthy, productive choices that they can make about their lives today and as they move along through the future. And we know as librarians that this doesn't happen automatically. You can't just have a good library with a good bunch of stuff in it and expect that people are going to come in out of some magical way and take advantage of all you have. You've got to have staff, which I've come to think is the most important resource that we have, in order to work with people, in order to take advantage of these resources that we're piling up for people to use in libraries.
It was interesting during the whole of the commission hearing. I did not hear the word library or school media center mentioned once, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't think we're being unduly defensive when we say that this is not an uncommon situation, but when we're aware of the kind of materials we have in libraries in Minnesota, and also of the staff who will help young people utilize those materials, it gets to be discouraging.
I think one situation is that libraries or information are implicit. People may recognize that they're needed, but they just assume that they're going to be there as a good thing. And our job in the library, information and media professions are to make the ways in which those resources are used explicit, so that people, teachers, and others who work with children and youth are very conscious about how resources that help people get information and make decisions are worked into their programs. And it's taken a long time for librarians who work in schools to realize that they've got to work with all of the teachers in order to make this happen. And now I see that public librarians are doing the same thing with their communities. They're realizing that you can't just sit back in the library and expect that every child who needs this is going to come to you, that children's librarians have to go out and have to make connections with other people who have some relationship with children, parents, or daycare providers, or 4-H leaders, or Boy Scouts,
social service agencies,
whatever it may be.
Any organization or agency in the community that's working with children and their families. Again, to serve the child in the context of the family or caregiver is another.
And when you get together with a group of children's services librarians and you hear the kinds of things that you're doing, then you get all excited that this is possible. The ones that I know, evidence that they're moving in this direction. That
I think we've come to the conclusion that we will not be able to expand our services unless we form coalitions and build partnerships with other people in the community to show that we are an integral part, not only of the community, but of the solution to the problems that are facing children and young people today. Libraries can be there. What are some of the other things that came out of the governor's conference in terms of the information needs of the older student, the high school age student going on to college or to the workforce?
One thing, since in the White House conference process that our governor's conference is leading up to, literacy is one of the 3 themes, along with productivity and participation and democracy. Democracy, literacy, and productivity are those 3 themes. And we've come to understand, I think very clearly in Minnesota, that literacy is a synonym for learning. And literacy is a continuum. And people have to go through a process so that they can come into it at any time. They may have missed these skills when they were younger, and now as adults they need literacy skills. But the purpose of getting this is to learn as you go along through life, and then to participate in society, to participate in work, to participate in whatever is available. Literacy or learning empowers people to be citizens.
And it's not just something that you need to do a good job.
No.
We did some interviews with other people, some social service people, some child care providers at the commission hearing. We've also got a short clip from the Lieutenant Governor Marlene Johnson's press conference describing what was going to happen at the commission hearing. Let's take a look at some of these now. Roger, Sween, thank you very much for being with us on All About Kids.
Very good.
In the Twin Cities area, we have had a wonderful reception. The National Commission on Children, as you know, is a joint presidential congressional commission that has been established to undertake a comprehensive assessment of the status of children and families in this country, and to report to the President and to Congress and to the governors in March of 1991. We have spent the last year traveling across the country, considering issues affecting the health and well-being of the nation's children in a series of public hearings, town meetings, site visits, focus groups, forums, and we're holding our last one here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area today. Our focus is really on two sets of issues that are relevant to building a productive labor force. The first of those is how, given changing patterns of labor force participation over the last decade and a half in this country, we can help working parents and employers balance the responsibilities of employment and raising a family. And secondly, how we can look to the future and ensure that the workforce of tomorrow has the kinds of skills and abilities and attitudes that we know are necessary to help this country participate and to be strong in a competitive global economy. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Lieutenant Governor Marlene Johnson.
Thank you very much. I first of all want to welcome Sherry Hayes and Bill Woodside and all the members of the National Commission on Children who have come to Minnesota for this final field hearing. We started inviting the Commission to hold a field hearing here several months ago, and are very pleased that they were able to fit us into what has been a very challenging schedule, both logistically and geographically. I believe and I hope that their decision to come here reflects Minnesota's public and private leadership on education and children's issues. The children of our state are among the healthiest and the most academically oriented youth in the United States. Our state ranks high nationally with favorable measures of prenatal care, infant mortality, teen births, low birth weight, poverty, high school graduation, and juvenile incarceration. A major part of our success can be attributed to a variety of innovative state programs that range from our children's health plan, parental leave policy, to the child care fund, to school choice programs, as well as our youth service initiatives. Another important factor, however, has been the significant involvement of the business community. The healthy development of our children has been greatly enhanced through the collaborative effort of state, government, local business, as well as philanthropic organizations. One of the reasons that I'm glad that the Commission is here with us today is because this hearing will help us build momentum for the work that remains to be done here in Minnesota. Because despite our tremendous successes, the unfinished business is as clear here as it is anywhere in the country. Only 30% of our eligible children are in Head Start. The waiting list for child care assistance is far longer than the number of children who are being served. The percentage of children living below the poverty line has dramatically worsened during the 1980s. In 1979, 10% of children were in poverty, and by 1987 this had increased to 16%. Infant mortality rates, though declining, are still unacceptable. The number of low birth weight babies needs to come down, not just remain stable. All of these challenges and many others require a concerted effort by state and local partners and by the federal government. Having the National Commission here today with us reflects a heightened awareness that children must be at the top of the national agenda as well as the top of our state agenda. I'm looking forward to hearing the testimony of our witnesses today and working with the Commission on implementing its final recommendations that will be directed to the Congress and the President later next spring. Thank you very much.
I'd now like to introduce Mr. William Woodside, who is the chairman of the board of Sky Chefs Incorporated. Bill also serves as the chairman of the Commission's Corporate Advisory Board.
Thank you, Sherry. Let me go directly to, I suppose, one of the questions that must be in somebody's mind someplace. Why a business, a corporate advisory board to this National Commission? And I think the reasons are pretty simple. The corporation world has been very much involved in educational issues because they've been looking at their workforce and what's been happening to it, to the sophistication of their jobs and how that's been increasing, and becoming more and more concerned about the education of their future employees. And I think, by and large, it is the largest block of supporters for improving the education process and the whole children development idea that exists in the U.S. I think the business community understands the investment concept very clearly in this social arena. They're used to spending a lot of money today and not seeing results for 5 or 10 years down the road. And that's always difficult viewpoint to bring to something in the social services or educational field. And yet here I think it's absolutely imperative that we have that viewpoint. We've had a system that's been running downhill for the last 50 years. It's going to take at least a quarter of a century to make very substantial improvement in it. And I think also the business community understands that education itself and the school years are only a small part of the problem that this commission is dealing with. And they understand that when we talk education, we're talking about a process that starts 9 months before birth. And so we talk about such things as prenatal care, of the WIC programs, of Head Start and Chapter 1, childhood immunization, quality daycare, which is one of the things we spent all morning talking about with the target group. We're talking about effective teenage pregnancy prevention programs. We're talking about improving the work welfare programs, which we're just beginning to make a small start on. And we're talking really about dramatic changes to the educational system, where there are plenty of models both in this country and abroad that can help us to do such things as improving the content, using some of the more modern techniques for imparting knowledge. We get into areas of choice, school-based management, lengthened school days. All of these have models elsewhere. As a matter of fact, every one of these 8 points that I talk about has proven economic value to us. We know that for every dollar we spend on WIC, we save 3. We know for every dollar we spend on Head Start, we save 6 in the long run. But it's hard for that to really take place. Now, what directly is this business advisory group going to do? We're going to give our inputs as we see them into the commission. I've been attending a number of the hearings myself, personally. We're going to get whatever ideas we've managed to develop. And this Twin Cities area has developed many of those that are models for the rest of the U.S. and certain parts of Western Europe. But we're here essentially to do things after this commission comes to an end. The commission ends on March 31st, 1991. And at that time it presents a report to the President and to the Congress. And then the commission expires. The business community is going to make certain that while the commission may expire, the ideas that it is espousing and the programs it's recommending will not disappear. We'll do our best in legislative halls, in dealing with direct testimony in Congress and at the various state levels across the U.S., and with our senators and congressmen in both, certainly in Washington, and our representatives in our state capitals, to make certain that action begins to take place on a large number of these fronts. And we don't expect instant results. We're here for the long haul, and hopefully we're all going to be successful in doing something about children, about children's education, and about preparing adults for a meaningful role in an effective U.S. society. Now, the Commission has a number of members from the local community. That is, the Business Advisory Group has a number of members from the local community. I won't read them off. You all have the press release. They're listed in there, and you can see them very clearly. And this reflects the fact that of all the areas in the U.S., it is this Twin Cities area that has had the most focused attention, the most resources devoted to trying to solve the very issues we're trying to solve on a national basis. Thank you very much.
People, when they understand that what the Commission is trying to do is give a focused approach to the needs of young people in this country, I think that they want to be heard. They're glad that they have someone that they can tell about what their needs are, and I think that they are hopeful that the Commission's recommendations will be something that will work. But
at the Department of Human Services, we're increasingly concerned about children that we consider to be at risk. That is, at risk of being able to have access to good educational programs to become productive members of the workforce. We have seen increasing numbers of children, not only across the country, but here in Minnesota, who don't have access to health care or whose mother hasn't had good prenatal care. Children who are increasingly at risk of growing up without their parents.
Today they're particularly looking at the transition between work or school and work. And there's a whole group of kids that we don't put a nickel into after they get out of high school, and those are the kids that don't go on to college or to VOTEC school. You know, in our state, we've got a wonderful system of community colleges, 2- and 4-year institutions, state colleges, the university. We've got a lot of higher ed, and that's all subsidized by us taxpayers. So the tuition that kids pay is less than what it really costs. So we put a real investment in the kids that go on, but the kids that don't go on are just thrown to the wolves. There's no internship money for them. There's no kind of help to get them into the workforce or get them connected. And these are the ones that often end up with spotty work histories or in those dead-end jobs. And they then become the poor parents that are the parents of our poorest children. The littlest children in our state, the 1 to 4-year-olds, are also the poorest children, and it's because their parents can't earn enough to keep them out of poverty. Those are the kinds of...
The mission of the National Commission on Children is to develop a policy agenda which will ensure that each child growing up today will achieve his or her full potential as adults, literate and productive adults. The Commission is also interested in developing a system of support for families in today's society. Thanks to Roger Sween for joining us on our program today, and thank you to the people with whom we spoke during the field hearing. And thanks to all of you for joining us on All About Kids. Please tune in again.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency.